Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another video. Obviously back with John. John, how are you?
I'm good, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good, healthy. Obviously a little bit bored at home like everyone else, but it's nice, with some warmer weather coming that things are doing better. So, but let's
Good.
hop into things. So, we're hoping on this video to do a lot of chatting about the industry, obviously, just the general world, how it's going, financial industries, financial markets, getting your opinions there, talking about some vaccine-based stuff that we've just been seeing in the world, but also kind of chatting about what different countries are doing, and is there a better way, and is one country doing things better than others? So I guess let's start off, obviously this past week, past kind of 2 weeks, I guess, whether you're in Canada, the US, or elsewhere, a lot of financial aid has been coming to residents. In Canada, you've got more than 15% of the country getting $2,000 per month. Obviously in the US, it's basically everyone under a $90,000 income is getting $1,200, and then additional amounts based on unemployment and other things. Kind of what's your idea of what's the impact, on the general markets? Do you think things, you're going to see anything change? Obviously, based on, different age in the person, whether they have a full family they have to support, etc. But what's kind of your general opinion on this financial aid?
Well, I think it's definitely going to help the economy when things open up again. You're getting the average worker actually probably ending up with more money than they did if they stayed on their job. Because here in Minnesota, unemployment for the average person, I think per week, is like $450, and then they get $600 on top from the federal government every week, but that $600 is non-taxable. Therefore, their equivalent income, I think, is in the $40-some thousand range. So they're definitely feeling a little better off, and they're not doing any work. So it's allowing them to actually create some savings because they're not out at the bar spending the money. I was talking to a couple of friends, and they said, John, you don't realize how much I'm saving by not going out to restaurants and bars. And then they started calculating. They go, I'm going to have a lot of disposable income when things start opening up. So I think the strategy of putting income into the consumer's hands are good, but it doesn't change the supply-demand equation because you just can't spend the money even if you wanted to right now. From a entertainment standpoint, hospitality. In the United States, the driver of the economy was the consumer. About 70% of the consumers the economy is consumer-driven, while 30 is basically manufacturing. So that's the side of the market that's getting the money, which is good thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. On the other side, I was talking to someone too, here in Canada, ton of people getting $2,000 a month, a lot of millennials, and the younger generations getting it. So the idea is also, like you said, people ending up with more money than they would have. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are getting a lot less than they were, but still, bringing things back. If you're a student, and a lot of students were working part-time jobs, generally at a restaurant, at a bar, right? Jobs that would have slowed down or stopped, they're able to now claim $2,000 a month. And we were chatting about consumer spending habits where you're looking at obviously alcohol, cannabis related, but even other stuff where now budgeting to get a pet or something becomes a lot more realistic. Correct?
Well, I actually think what's going to happen is you're going to see a transfer of wealth where you just opened up opportunity to the millennials, the younger people that didn't have savings. Now they have savings. They have an opportunity coming out of it to look at opening small businesses, because I believe there's future phases of stimulus where the SBA is going to make loans available for business startup, for the small business person. So I think a very good opportunity for the younger people to do that. And you are correct. I was talking to someone that had retired but he was bored, so he took a part-time job, and he was literally working 10 hours a week, and he's still going to get the $600 a week,
Yeah.
in the federal government, and his unemployment. He goes, John, I've been retired. I took a job at a golf course to work as a marshal, and then I get laid off, and then all of a sudden I realize I'm getting $600 a week on top of the unemployment I was getting. My unemployment's like $60 a week, and I'm getting $600 from the federal government. So he goes, I'm way ahead in the game, but I feel guilty. And I said, well, donate it then. If you feel guilty, donate it to a charity.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's true. And obviously, I mean, there is people that are going to have to use the money for their rent, for their food, depending on the situation everyone's in. But the other argument was, people that are making above 90K, they were arguably in a decision-making role where a lot of their work transferred to working from home. So they're not as affected, at least that group. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I think, buying habits will be interesting to look at. And also, after the lockdown, like you said, everyone's going to have this money where now, are you going to see everyone racing back to restaurants and bars? Or are you going to see, people starting to be like, well, now I realize that this can happen. It could happen again. I didn't need to live with this thing or that thing. I can just live with this. And I think there's also some good learning coming for a lot of people as well when it comes to, what do they really need?
Yeah, no, we found out there was a lot that we didn't need, from talking to friends. And so we're going to be much more tuned in to what's important, as well as when you say going back and things opening up, it really is not going to open up to normal until we have a vaccine. And that vaccine's probably a year out, okay? There's going to be multiple vaccines that will work. So, you're sitting here at a restaurant and they still are going to probably want 6 feet apart. So a restaurant that normally sits 60 people, you may only get 20 people into it just because of the spacing. So does the economics work for these businesses? And if you're in New York City, these restaurants are generally pretty small, 20 some people, 15 to 20. You can only sit like 8 people at any time. So can you make money on that type of model? So there's going to be a lot of adjustments. And people think we're going to have a V economy. I don't think we're going to see that. There's been too much erosion and destruction within the smaller business climate that it's going to be more of a U-type recovery situation. And you've got major changes in consumption. The cruise lines are not going to come right back. Airlines are not going to come right back. You're looking at oil, where the fundamental equation of oil is we're still going to have 20 some million barrels extra a day in production over demand, so those things are going to take a lot of time for it to shake itself out.
Yeah, you touched on a couple things, obviously vaccine, but also one quickly, you're touching on airlines. It was super interesting. Obviously Air Canada and some other airlines have come out and done some discussions and done some chats. But I think it's interesting from, 38%, I think of most airline travel is business oriented, right? And a lot of businesses adapting to this work from home culture and maybe realizing, look, I don't need Jason to fly all the way to the UK 6 times a year, right? And I think you're seeing businesses realize that, and spending obviously going to impact that, and airlines might take a much longer time to see recovery. I see a lot of them starting to look a lot more at vacations and destination-based travel. What's kind of your opinion there?
Well, the difficulty for the airlines is, one, it costs a lot just to keep a plane sitting, because they have to worry about the fuels getting algae grown in it and other substance that would actually destroy a lot of the internal parts if they let a plane sit. So they got to run these planes. Secondarily, you saw today Boeing got a lot of their 737 Maxes canceled out. You got a lot of airlines that don't need to make capital investments now into new airplanes because they have a lot sitting there that they have to maintain. And I think you're right on the travel aspect. Is the day-to-day normal travel for business is going to get greatly reduced. Big ticket transactions are still going to require in person. because you're talking potential M&A transactions and IPOs and stuff like that. That requires in-person, and they're doing road shows to the portfolio managers. That's an in-person thing, because a lot of the portfolio managers says the biggest key to a success of the company is the intangibles of management. Then they have to see how you respond, and they ask certain questions to see how you respond in your personal body language. So that aspect won't change, but you are absolutely correct. I think there's going to be a lot less travel, and they're going to have to look for alternative ways of making capital, because the business people subsidize the casual travel. There's absolutely no doubt, because I find many times I pay 3-4 times what the person next to me, because they were able to book a month in advance and I had 2 days to book mine.
Yes. No, it's so true. No, and very interesting. So I guess, we'll see what comes out. They've got their own battles. Like you said, cruise lines, just the tourism industry is going to take a little bit longer than other industries to come back. But let's go in, obviously you talked about vaccine, at least 12 months out. Bill Gates kind of echoed that pretty recently, saying that a vaccine is 12 to 18 months away. What do you think's next on a vaccine? What makes it take 12 months for people who aren't familiar with the process, and kind of just what's your thoughts on a vaccine and potentially, second, third, fourth waves of the virus, like, even other countries are seeing already?
Sure. In the UK, their health minister, I think, said they were 80% confident that a vaccine could be ready this fall. They said the preliminary works look very good, but what takes the time is going through the FDA various stages of trials to make sure that the vaccine doesn't cause some other type of issue that could be even more serious than the current virus. Because the vaccine being injected could mutate that virus if it isn't properly tested, where it becomes even more contagious. So you have to put in the time, you have to put in the safety checks and measures, but there is things you can shortcut to a certain degree. So I think by early 2021, we're going to have multiple vaccines approved through the FDA. They know the genome of the virus. They know which of the proteins or the RNA strands they have to go after to actually cause the viral not to spread, the vaccine not to spread, or not the vaccine, I'm sorry, the virus not to spread, and also allow the virus to explode itself. Because if you look at the virus, it's basically what protects the virus is a coating of fat. And that's why when you use soap and water, warm water, over, I believe it's 77 degrees, it breaks that fat layer down, and the virus is exposed, and it just gets exploded. So because it's not a living organism, so you can't say it kills it, but it just takes all its ability to replicate away once you take that fat layer off. So I always say, I probably wash with Dawn, because Dawn is such a great grease reliever, so when I do my hands, but that's just personally. Soap does a good job. Don't worry, don't listen to me about the Dawn thing. I just do it myself once in a while. Now, I can't recall what was the follow-along question.
Yeah, the like next layer is kind of, potential second, third, even fourth waves of the virus. Kind of what's your opinions on those?
So future waves will have less of an impact because we already have antibodies, and the mutation of the COVID-19 is very slow. From the standpoint is, if you look at the virus itself, it's one long strand of RNA. Of the RNA strand, and it takes a long time to change. The flu has 8 mini strands, so it changes every year. So we have to guess what that mutation is, so we get the vaccine that fits for that year. So most likelihood, the second time coming around, we have a larger population with antibodies, and in theory, your herd immunity hits at around 60% of the population that's already been infected. It basically burns off the virus. It won't spread anymore. just because you got enough people that's preventing it from spreading. So
Yeah.
second, third, fourth wave will have minimal effects. And that's why Dr. Fauci was saying next year or this fall, if the virus subsides now and it comes back, it will have much less of an impact, and we will be better prepared to know how to address the issues.
Yeah, interesting. This kind of leads into, the next question, which is, a lot of countries are doing different things. Obviously the US and Canada, they're doing this full kind of lockdown, essential businesses, etc. Basically don't go outside unless you want a ticket, or you have to go outside, right? Now you've got other countries, Sweden, for example, which is continue as normal, but take precautions, wear gloves, wear masks, and it's out there, so be careful. And then you have even now going back to China, where they are seeing the second wave of the virus, but their economic impact of locking everything down for longer periods of time, obviously it is financially difficult. So what's your opinions on all these things together? Is there better ways? Can you understand Sweden versus other parts in the world? And just what's your thoughts?
Well, I think here in the US we are doing it right in terms of locking ourselves down, no work, no going to work, and we will flatten the curve. Now, at a certain point, you have to say, after we plateau, when do we come back and how do we come back as a strategy? That remains to be seen on the new task force that will be developed by the president on how the economy recovers. Situations like Sweden. So with this type of scenario, you can't go in between, I don't think. You've got to take one extreme or the other extreme. And once you're on one path, you really can't change to the other path, or I think you're in for more trouble. So if we look at the rest of the world, we're seeing the peak. You're seeing a plateauing happening in New York. It will start curtailing down. But I believe we're doing all the right moves, okay? I do not believe not having mitigation, we would have had a lot more people, much higher mortality rate. That's my opinion. You mentioned Sweden. I think we're going to see, and we started to see, a pickup in the infections and the mortality rate. There's a lot of variables that skew some of these numbers, because you look at Southern Hemisphere, you look at other areas like Africa, why hasn't it broken out? And some of the answers could be they're high malaria places where they're still taking hydrocortisone, the HCQ, for malaria, and that could be preventing or suppressing the virus from spreading within the body. Asia is another unique situation. If you look at historical pandemics that have occurred there, the last two, China, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, all those areas were severely hit. They had a much higher infection rate, incident rate, and if you understand the genome of the viruses, like the SARS virus and COVID-19, they're 80% of the same genome. So there may be some built-in pre-existing antibodies that may make it less likely that these people will get the disease. And also the blood type has a big variable. If you have an O type, it doesn't seem to hit you as hard. If you have an A type, you're much more susceptible to the virus having more damaging effects on your pulmonary as well as cardiac area.
Interesting. Oh, extremely interesting insight. Obviously, for a lot of people, you're just watching the news, you just see what's out there. You don't see, the parts that you say. So that's awesome.
Yeah, right now you're seeing African Americans in the United States having a higher incident of mortality issues within the United States, and a lot of that is, if you look at the risk factors for coronavirus, it's diabetes, hypertension, obesity. Those are three prominent areas that exists in the African American race right now in the United States. And a lot of it's dietary and so on too. And so, if you're in the South, you're eating all this fat food, you're going to have probably high cholesterol and hypertension and congestive heart issues.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's cool, especially when, a guy like yourself who sees the numbers, and you guys can kind of extrapolate what's happening and kind of come up with obviously your ideas for why it is happening. And that's that's extremely interesting. So, okay, cool. Well, I mean, let's jump back, to a little bit more about, PetVivo and what you guys are doing. So let's talk, I guess, like what's the situation like for a company like yours? I know we touched on it a little bit in previous videos, but is there anything new to mention today? What's keeping you busy on a day-to-day?
Well, I've been dealing with the various analysts that follow our sector, giving them my take on the marketplace, where when we come back, there's going to be an instant bump in the normal checkups for the vets because they've been all put off, and that we are recession proof. We really are, except when they're shut down. There's nothing you can do about that. But once it opens, I think we're going to see the spending come right back up. They'll get their normal shots. They'll start getting looking at our product for treating osteoarthritis. So I think our job right now is to reach out to many vets and just talk to them about our product. And the one interesting thing is the video we did with you guys actually really helped from that standpoint, because I think a lot of vets are sitting at home, and when they see a mention of a potential new product for the treatment of osteoarthritis that has very good efficacy over the current therapy, it draws their attention, and it helps us get in to have conversations with them.
Yeah, so I mean, like we discussed a little bit, it seems like there's definitely good potential, after the full lockdown for PetVivo. There's going to be people with more money, hopefully, whether that's buying pets, insurance, going to the vet more often because now they can afford it, you name it. And then leading into also, there's been a ton of great outreach. I know you mentioned you've been having some great chats with some new, doctors, some new veterinarians that obviously you guys can link up with. And that seems to be a lot of the medical kind of sales strategy is, try and find a doctor or clinics that will support your product. And obviously, if they see something that works and something as amazing as what you guys are doing, then it makes a lot of sense. So you've been having great conversations, like you said?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're looking forward to, having some of these videos go out and get the consumer involved, because we do have a nonprofit branch of PetVivo called PetVivo Cares, where we donate to nonprofit organizations like animal rescues, humane societies, so to make the dogs or horses more attractive in being adopted. Because the number one issue that we find that people have when they're thinking about adopting a dog or a horse is lameness issues. And if we can fix that issue or eliminate it as a variable, the likelihood of that dog or horse finding a home increases greatly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I guess cool, is there anything you want to leave your investors with, or anyone that's potentially interested just in PetVivo before we end this video?
Well, obviously management, has been working hard with the company to try to increase shareholder value, and will continue to do that. And I think if they look at our commitment and what the business plan is, we're very confident that we'll be able to execute and create shareholder value.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, awesome. Anyone who's interested, obviously we do have a Telegram. John is active on LinkedIn as well as other mediums. Feel free to reach out, ask questions. We can squeeze them into next videos. And, again, John, thanks for hopping on, and we'll talk to everyone next week.
Thank you, Jason.